my second podcast finally. It's been such an epic journey to try and find any information pertaining to the crash boats, in particular a singular one called P-520. My name is David Laney and I'm your director for the 520. So when I started trying to find information about these boats, it became apparent that I probably wasn't going to find it. I had reached out to the National Air Force Museum, who referred me over to the National Air Force Archives. Unfortunately, the National Air Force Archives did not have anything on file. At that point, I also reached out to the Army, considering she is an Army boat. And the National Army Museum said that they did not have anything on them. They referred me over to a transportation museum, and even through there was not much I could find. So when we came aboard, knowing we had a couple trips coming up, I started cleaning through because we had about 3 days before we were going to Virginia. So I started digging through the radio room, a couple cabinets we hadn't really touched yet. There was a yellow notepad sitting in there. Looking through the yellow notepad, it turned out that it was Bud Tretters' personal journal. He had written down his memoirs. It seemed like that he was going to a meeting, so he really made a heck of a speech talking about the 520, his personal experience, and crash boats in general. Today I'm going to read, after I had transcribed all these notes onto my computer, just what we have found on them. So without further ado, Bud Tretters starts out with, the use of the boats to rescue downed pilots is as old as flight itself over water. Imagine a scene such as this. Two guys watching a fabric-covered biplane flying over a body of water when suddenly the engine starts popping and sputtering and then quits altogether. The pilot desperately trying to glide to shore, but just doesn't have the altitude to make it and crashes into water, a short distance from shore. One of the men turns to the other and says, "Looky there, that airplane just crashed in the water. Let's get the rowboat over there and see if we can help the pilot." Thus, you have the world's first crash boat. This actually happened in 1921 at Langley Field, Virginia, in the Chesapeake Bay. The plane was a World War I vintage Jenny, and both men were saved. The modern-day crash boat came out in World War II during the Battle of Britain in 1939. The RAF was losing pilots that, even though they were shot out of the sky by the Luftwaffe and were able to parachute to a safe landing in the ocean, were lost to the sea because there were no high-speed boats to get out to where they were and to rescue the pilot. The Brits solved this problem by converting some of their PT boats and patrol boats used to rescue craft. Soon, not only young Spitfire and Hawker Hurricane pilots were being rescued to fly again, but young Heinkel, Messerschmitt, Fokker-Wulf, and Dornier pilots were also being rescued, and interned in POW camps never to fly against England again. The U.S. got wind of this and sent a delegation of Army Air Corps people to observe this operation. They saw that it really did work and decided that they too needed similar craft seaworthy and fast. There were several types of boats designed for rescue operations ranging in size from 18, 24 to 104 feet. The most successful were the 63 and 85 footers. Both of these boats were designed by Dare Long of Los Angeles. By the way, after World War II, designed a Harlow 40-foot built by Harbor Boat Company, the first V-bottoms Drake craft. The name Drake should be familiar to you older members. Hart Drake was Commodore of this club in 1968. I personally knew Dare Long, and in my surveying days surveyed his own Harco 40. Unfortunately, Dare was addicted to the bottle and drank himself to death sometime in the early 1970s. The design I am talking about today is design number 379, the 85-foot U.S. Army patrol boat, later to be known as ABR, which is the abbreviation for Aviation Rescue, and later to be known as crash boats. The 85 foots were built by 8 yards ranging from Massachusetts, New York, Florida, and California. Each yard contracted to build approximately 8 boats each. All yards worked from a set of specifications by the War Department and were identical. A total of 70 85 footers were built in 1944 alone. A general description as shown in the builder spec states the bottom The boat is intended for offshore, long-range operations. The hull is a twin-screw V bottom stepless hydroplane and shall be capable of being driven at high speeds under severe weather conditions without excessive pounding, yet remaining dry. To accomplish this requirement, the stern forefoot and chines were mahogany. The keelson and longitudinal stringers were Douglas fir. Bottom frames were oak, and topside framing from chine up were mahogany frames on 12-inch centers. Inner planking is half an inch thick, cedar run at a 45-degree angle and fastened to frames. A layer of 6-ounce cotton duck laid in with glue, and then 5/8-inch mahogany outer planking run longitudinally and fastened to frames through the inner planking. Inner planking was then screwed every 2 inches from the inside of the outer plank's main deck, and cabin was of 1-inch plywood. Main deck was covered by 12-ounce cotton buck canvas glued down and then painted. Propulsion was provided by 2 Packard engines, driving through a 1-5-1 V drive. Fuel capacity was 3,840 gallons of 130 octane aviation gasoline carried in 8 neoprene tanks. The principal dimensions are LOA 85 feet, LWL 78 feet, 10 inches, beam was 20 foot 3, draft was 4 foot 8. Fully loaded, they were 103,700 pounds or 51.8 tons. Top speed was 35 knots and cruise was 24. The range at 24 knots was 545 nautical miles. This equates to 132 gallons per hour. Well, that gives you a rough picture of the characteristics of the 85-foot crash boat. Most people think that the boat we have at the shipyard is a PT boat, and they are very similar in looks. In fact, there are only 2 types of people who know the difference PT dudes and crash boaters. A short story. In 1960, when I was skipper of PT-73 and running the boat in McHale's Navy, we kept the boat at Colonial Yacht, which my dad owns. Some men came down to the boat and introduced themselves as being from Universal Studios. They told me that they were going to make a movie about JFK and his experiences with PT boats in the South Pacific. The name of the movie was to be PT-109. I told them that they were welcome to come aboard, but this boat was nothing like the Elko 82-footers that JFK commanded. I explained that the McHale Navy boat was a British-designed Vosper PT 75-footer in length. I asked them why they did not go to the Navy for their needs, whereby they informed me that they had been to the Navy and were told that there were no more 82-foot Elko PTs in existence, and that there were no drawings available. They then told me that they had 4 85-foot crash boats and that they intended to cut the cabins off and construct PT boat cabins and deck layouts on a crash boat. But they didn't know what an Elko actually looked like. I told them I had a Reveille plastic model of a PT boat that I had put together, and that if they wanted to, I would loan them the model. They jumped at this suggestion and promised to return the model. They had the model for about a month, and when it was returned, they told me they copied every detail and thanked me very much. Sure enough, when this movie came out, there were 85-foot crash boat hulls that looked exactly like real PT boats. Well, enough of that. The boat we are restoring was built in Wilmington Boat Works in 1944. They were contracted to build boats P-518 through 525. This is U.S. Army P-520. The boat was launched in 1944 after sea trials and acceptance started service in Newport Beach. Shortly thereafter, it was transferred to a unit near the Sausalito side of the Golden Gate Bridge and covered the Bay Area as an aviation rescue boat. In 1947, P-520 was sold off as war surplus to a man from Newport Beach. He soon found out what Packard engines cost to run and replaced them with 4 671 diesel engines, 2 on each shaft. He also portioned off the crew quarters forward and made some other minor modifications. He kept the boat for a relatively short period of time and sold it to a fishing company. After a period of time, it was sold off to a private individual, and it was brought to Newark Yacht Center on Cerritos Channel, next to the Colonial, and not more than a half mile from where she was built. The boat stayed at Newark's unused, unattended, and gradually deteriorating away. We do know that the boat was dry docked in 1983 and 83, and its bottom painted. The owner finally died, and subsequently his widow removed the 4 diesel engines and sold it to another Newport Beach man who had visions of restoring it. The most important thing about all the owners in the life of the P-520 is that no one modified or converted the boat from its original configuration. Minor portions except. The new owner had the boat towed to a shipyard in San Diego, where he planned to spend approximately $500,000 restoring it to its military originality. It was about at this time that the owner heard about our Air Force Crash Boat Association and came to our reunion in Orlando in October of '97. In January of '98, he contacted the association president and stated that he would donate the boat to us if he thought we would want it. For the past 10 years, we had our members searched the world over for either a good original 63-footer or an 85-footer. And I am here to tell you that P-520 is truly the last remaining unaltered, unconverted original 85-foot crash boat. This is like me telling you that this is the last remaining B-17. Anyway, our villa and I drove to San Diego and met with the owner, and listened to him expound about how good this boat was, how there was a minimum of dry rot, and how it hardly leaked, on and on and on and on. The boat was virtually an engineless, rotting, deteriorated hulk. But it was original, and we told him that we would be happy to have it, and we certainly grateful for his generous offer. I must tell you, however, that he had paid $25,000 to the old widow and was successfully in writing off $160,000 for the donation. My son Jerry and I borrowed a 75-foot crew boat that lives at the shipyard and towed it back to Long Beach. We have since dry docked the boat, put on a whole new transform, replaced approximately 40% of the planking on each side and about 50% of the bow. The bottom was clean and caulked off, some areas refastened and bottom painted for the first time in 15 years. We are presently finishing up reconstruction and restoration of the cabin. We have no schedule for completion of the boat. We use it to fill in work during slower periods rather than lay men off. We need to acquire a pair of good diesel engines, a minimum of 600 horsepower each, and when she is ready, we will run the boat from Long Beach through the Panama Canal to its final destination at Battleship Alabama Memorial and Museum, Mobile, Alabama. This is a voyage of 500 running hours at 10 knots. Since she is an old lady, we don't want to run her any faster than 10 knots. I don't think she will be ready for at least 2 years. Bud now goes on to explain his personal experience in Korea being a part of the 85-footers. When the Korean War broke out on June 25th, 1950, the U.S.A.A.F had put together a boat squadron in Fukuoka, Japan, which is located on the southern island just north of Nagasaki, and the closest port to Busan, South Korea. The boat outfit had no boats and only one officer to put the squadron together quickly. A call went out throughout the Air Force for any personnel with boat experience. Boats were recalled from storage in the Philippines, Okinawa, Guam, and Japan. It all eventually came together and became known as the 22nd Air Crash Boat Rescue Squadron. The 22nd consisted of one 24-foot open cockpit V-boat, one 42 that looked like an old Chris craft, 6 63-footers, one 114 FP boat, and 4 85s. The FP was used to supply and refuel the boats stationed on the east and west coasts of the Korean Peninsula, but below the 38th parallel, which only involved the 63-footers. No 63-footers were operated north of the 38th parallel. The FP was used as MacArthur's communication vessel during the invasion of the Philippines, and which was eventually replaced by a bigger, better steel-hulled vessel. MacArthur turned it over to the Press Corps and became Ernie Pyle's base of operations. It was used for fishing and excursion in the Tokyo Bay. The 4 85-footers, 654, 664, 676, and 667 operated out of the advanced base at Ichino Icheon at an island 50 miles north of the 38. The island's name was Chodo and was approximately 5 miles off the Chimnam-po River. My boat was the 664 and was of course the best, fastest, and baddest boat of the four. We carried an 18-man crew of 5 of which were engineers, 1 cook, 1 medic, 1 armorer, and skipper and mate, and 8 deckhands. We carried 500 gallons of fresh water, which was mainly used for drinking and cooking. Showers were out of the question. We did get an occasional shower from either a U.S. destroyer or a British frigate. Our armament consisted of a single 50 cal machine gun each side of the bridge, 1 single 50 aft, and quad 50 electrical turret mounted on the foredeck. In addition to the machine guns, we had a 3.2 bazooka and a 57mm recoilless rifle, which we had stolen from the Army in Posan. The 4 85-footers were attached to the 5th Air Force Intelligence and used for special operations in the North Yellow Sea. During the winter in the North Yellow Sea, ice is up to the extent that at times we were iced in and you could walk around the boat on the ice. We would use the bazooka to blow holes ahead of us to break up the ice so that we could get out of there. The cold was so intense, 10 to 30 degrees below zero, that we only stood 30-minute watches. By the same token, it got just as hot and humid during the summer. Due to the ice during the winter, most of our special ops were carried out during the summer or when the ice was not so bad during the winter. Most of our missions on the 664 were to insert teams of spooks into North Korea, Manchuria, and China itself. Places we weren't supposed to be. Special Operations 5th Air Force was run by Mr. Don Nichols, who kind of reminded me of Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. Unfortunately, Nichols loved our 85-footers and dreamed of all kinds of things for us to do. We have laid in the Yalu River for 3 days waiting for a team of spooks to return when MiG-15s passing overhead from their base in Antong, Manchuria. We had running gun battles with big diesel-powered junks. We strafed little fishing villages at night, operating together with South Korean Elco PT boats. They originally had 8 but had lost 4 due to gunfire. One of the good things that Nichols did for us was to classify our ranks. We wore no rank insignias. We carried no ID other than our dog tags. There were a couple of good reasons for this. We carried an officer aboard the boats. It was manned solely by enlisted personnel. The officers, including skippers of U.S., British, and Dutch ships operating the area, did not know anything about us, and it was thus easier to get freshwater food and ammunition, and to take the occasional bath always in officer quarters. The other reason was that at times we were in places that we were not supposed to be in case of capture, and that all they would get off of us was our dog tags, name, and serial number. When the shooting stopped in June of 1953, I stepped off the 664 for the last time and never saw her again. In 1957, the Air Force disbanded all rescue boats worldwide. All the boats in the Far East were brought back to Japan, disarmed, repainted, repaired, and restored to a like-new condition. They were then run to Sasebo at the southern end of Kyushu, where the Air Force had contracted the U.S. Navy to auction them off and turn the money over to them. All of the boats were sold off to the Japanese and bought on the average 5 cents on the dollar. There were thousands of memories, just as many emotions sparked by the 85s across the channel, and this is why we are restoring the last remaining boat and will eventually present it to the museum in Mobile, Alabama. There's also a couple articles that went along with the memoirs, progress updates by local news companies and local newspapers that we'll be willing to share as well. And I mean, just finding this was something that was absolutely incredible, and it really clears up an area where we did not have any clarity, I guess you could say. A lot of things I had been writing up were a mystery. Did she serve in Korea? Did she not? What Bud left here was absolutely fantastic, and I mean, to this day, we're still running the 520. Like I said, right now we're making up the run in Chesapeake Bay. I believe it's somewhere around 8 p.m. And we're gonna keep her traveling and go make port calls, have fun, and keep up a dream and continue to tell the story of what he and his crew had done with her. Again, my name is David. I enjoyed reading that to you today, and from here, I wish all of you a great day. Have a good night. If you wish to support us, go on our website, P-520s.org. We are a full nonprofit 501c3. None of us are here to get paid. The last 2 weeks, we've all been down here just working on the boat and getting her ready to move around. Again, thank you, and everyone take care.